So yeah, thank you so much for joining everyone. I think this event has been long pending. I've been hearing questions around, Upwork and how to kind of be a successful designer at Upwork for within our community. It's been like one of the number one questions. So I've been wanting to host this event for a long time, and it so happened like around last month, I had up a conversation with Swati, and we were like, okay, kind of like let's do it. So, yeah, thank you, Swati, for joining us. A brief introduction about Swati for everyone. Yes, she will be sharing more about her journey, but she's been a designer at Upwork for over 3 years now. She started her design career at Upwork, and in this span, she's worked on over 100 projects and earned over like 100K USD in earnings around this time. And pretty impressive, I must say, like pretty impressive journey so far at Upwork. So the way that we've planned this conversation is the session is we will have an initial conversation with Swati where she will share all about her experience, her journey, and all the learnings along the way. And post that, we would open up the forum for Q&A. And for anyone who's submitted their questions, we would also address those questions at the end of this conversation. So yeah, I think let's get started. Just one thing, sorry, forgot to mention. So during this conversation, if anyone has any questions, please add it to the chat. We will take that up as well. So you can just add your questions or comments or anything in the chat. Cool. Let's get started then.
All right. Thanks for
I didn't
having
realize.
Samyukta. As you said, we had a great conversation, and definitely I'd like to share anything I know about Upwork with any of the newbie freelancers or people who are trying to make it on Upwork. Yeah, back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I think let's just start with sharing about your experience and your journey. Like what led you to Upwork? As I believe, like you had some prior experience, right? It's not like the start of your career. You've done your master's as well. So if you could just share a little bit about your experience and your journey up to Upwork.
Yeah. So I did my master's in engineering management. I come from an engineering educational background, but I've worked in IT since the beginning of my career, which was in 2015. I worked as a business analyst, worked in some product and project management roles, and that led me to trying to explore UI UX. And I took a boot camp on UI UX from an online e-learning space called Springboard, and that's what led me. Like it was a 9-month course, which helped me understand more about the intricacies of UI UX. And then I, instead of jumping into a full-time role, I wanted to explore freelancing, and that's when I came across Upwork.
Awesome. And what made you choose Upwork? I think that's always been a big question for me. Like why Upwork, right? I mean, there are so many platforms out there. So what made you
Um,
decide that you want to start over there?
when I decided on freelancing, I initially thought about looking into a few freelancing platforms, but finally narrowed it down to Upwork and Fiverr. So I went through like generic information on their platforms, went through Google searches, looked at some subreddits, tried to understand what the process would be to find clients at each platform. Upwork seemed more required a proactive approach of applying and sending proposals to the clients by looking at their job posts, whereas Fiverr was some place where people like clients would reach out to you based on your profile. So you had to rank quite high in your niche or in your basically in my design career. So I would have had to have an established profile, portfolio, and all of that for Fiverr for clients to reach out to me versus Upwork, where I could reach out to clients through sending proposals. There's a cost associated with sending proposals, but I chose Upwork for that particular reason where the control was in my hands, whereas in Fiverr, it was mostly clients reaching out to me. So that was the reason I chose Upwork.
So also if I'm curious to know about like your journey, like you decided to get on Upwork. So what was your journey to landing your first client? Like, what was that experience like?
Um, it was a little difficult until I figured out how to write proposals. Proposal writing definitely was very frustrating because I was looking at all these different types of job posts and trying to apply to different. Uh, Within design, we have like UX research, we have UX
Yeah.
design, we have UI design. So I was trying to apply to everything, and I had to nail down a strategy for the clients to notice me. Not all proposals are like open by the clients to see what's in them. You have to be really concise in the first two sentences of what you write in your proposal for it to be intriguing enough for the client to open. For my first client, I realized within a week uh, as to what I needed to do. I literally went and started looking at job posts which had more detail about the client's problem. I was more interested in trying to solve problems for the client. And as long as the client job post consists of what problem it is, I can offer them high level solutions within the first two sentences of my proposal, which would then in turn hopefully lead them to open my proposal and then that leads to checking out my profile, and which will lead them to message you. So that is the process that a client would basically follow. And for it to actually be triggered, you have to be concise in your first two sentences that you write in your proposal. And that's where I focused my knowledge about how to solve these client problems and how to provide them with high level solutions. Like, you don't want to give them the whole solution because some clients take it to other cheaper freelancers and get the job done, but you can always provide them with like a bit of the solution and be like, okay, let's see if they bite.
That's interesting that you spoke about it. I think that's a pitfall many designers fall into as well, right? Like sharing whole designs as part of the thing, and also very interesting strategy of focusing on the first two lines and finding clients where you can kind of communicate and give that thing out over there. So yeah, and so how long did it take, if I might ask, for you to land your first client
So
at
it took me
Upwork?
5 days. It took me 5 days to land this one client. And funnily
This was in
enough,
which year? Which year was this? When did you start?
this was September of 2021.
2021. Okay, yeah.
I created my profile on September 4th of 2021. 5 days I was applying. Then I got super frustrated. Then I saw this one client who came up with a solution for their website, and I just ripped it apart. And I was like, this won't work. Eventually, that the way the client wanted it to do is how we did it. But he really appreciated that I was able to like stand up and kind of brainstorm with him through a proposal that these are
Mm,
ways that it won't work and these are ways that it may work. And he was really appreciative of the back and forth in that way.
mm.
So it's not like I literally solved the problem. I like my solution wasn't even taken into consideration, but um, that got us into this conversation where the client was like, okay, she wants to do what's best for me. And that was kind of like appreciated. So that's like clients like that do
Interesting.
exist. Sometimes people ask like, do good clients exist? And clients like that exist. Bad clients also exist and sometimes outnumber the good clients. But yeah, you have to take your shot in the first two lines of your proposal and then see where it goes. That's pretty much how I did it.
Cool. And how many proposals would you have sent in that 1 week before you landed your first client?
It would have easily, like, I haven't tracked it as much as I would have liked to now, uh, because I didn't really know if the Upwork would work for me. But it was easily from like 50 to 100 proposals on different job posts that I sent before I got this reply. And as I said, there is a cost associated with it, but I was like, I was like, I'll give this 2 weeks time. I went based on timeline versus the cost
Hmm.
associated. Like you can select either one and see which works. but you constantly have to like pivot, and you can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. So I was literally A B testing in my mind and trying to understand what works, what doesn't work as quickly as possible. Like I wasn't documenting anything per se, but I was like literally trying to see which strategy works, which doesn't. And when I started getting some replies, I went back to the proposals, checked out what works, and then had these patterns form in my mind, and then started working on that. And I've been there 3 years now, and I still have to evolve every day with every proposal. It's not like
Interesting.
worked 3 years ago works now, especially with the advancement of AI. So
Interesting.
that's also a thing.
Interesting. So just to like sum up, yes, a lot of applications, proposals that you sent, obviously not heard from many of them. And also using that time to constantly iterate and evolve and learn from what you're doing as to what worked versus what doesn't work, trying new things. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the phase before landing, before and after, if I might say. So still an
Yeah.
ongoing thing that's
And to
happening.
actually add to this, the stats, basically, I sent more than 2,500 proposals so far in the 3+ years that I've been on the platform. And
Okay.
my success rate of landing a client is about 5%.
Okay.
So it's a small number, but again, it's not exactly the success rate that counts. It's a KPI that you measure, but your uh, average pricing per project or your hourly rate and all of that is also taken into account, and you have to see how much you're making per client.
Hmm.
So based on that, it has been worth my while to be on Upwork and stay on Upwork and still find clients here. So that's something that I also want to mention. Although the success rate has been 5%, it's still good enough for me to stay here because it has been worth my while to spend on connects and proposals
Yeah,
and all of that and make that money back and more.
makes sense. So if I have to ask you, like, what would be the three strategies that you can share, like top strategies that you think are
Mhm.
like really good to have or like a must have for a platform like Upwork?
So I would basically start off by saying that initially, when you create your profile, you need to showcase your skills and create this clean, concise profile which shows that you have experience. Even if you don't have experience, show that you have some projects in there. If you have a portfolio, attach that. Again, positive client feedback on your profile is important, but at the same time, if you are new, you won't have that. So all you can do is make sure your profile is set up in a way that it's impressive, because first impressions do matter. The second thing strategy would be that you focus on profile optimization, proposal optimization. It's basically you trying to test out which strategy works. Again, focus on the first two lines of your every proposal that you send. Test as many, like you need to craft these compelling proposals that will make them the clients open your proposal. And once they open your proposal, if they scroll down, they'll literally be able to see your profile, which was strategy one. Make sure your profile is good, and it explains what you can do for the client and some results in terms of like having a portfolio. So once you they click on your profile, your once they click on your proposal, your profile will be attached to the proposal. So make sure these two are like solid. And the third thing would be, this is a debate for since the existence of time. It's like whether you would want to be a generalist or if you want to be niche in whatever you do. And then this was something that even I had a problem with when I first came in. I was like, what am I going to work on? Is it going to be just UX design, or am I going to do research? Um, so one thing you can do is look at the different types of jobs that are existing. Based on that, you can understand the popularity of what kind of jobs are being posted, and then upskill accordingly as quickly as possible. So do that initial research where you can look up jobs that have already been posted on Upwork, see uh, like which one is more popular. Initially, I would say having a generalist approach helps a lot, um, especially like it helps in two ways. One is you'll understand what the clients want, who's paying for what sort of skill, and the second thing would be while you're upskilling, you'll realize what you actually like doing. So initially, I was not into UX research, but then 2 years and I was doing more UX research projects than design. So that way you figure out like what works for you as well, what you like doing. But if you were to go niche, again, there's a lot of competition on Upwork, so I would not recommend niche unless it's like something that clients are willing to pay for and you're willing to deliver at that price point. So again, that's a debate for the time, and I went with a generalist approach, but I kind of like narrowed it down to a niche now.
Yeah, I think the last point is something that's pretty general also as a freelancer, right? Be it Upwork or non-Upwork. It's something, a decision that each designer freelancer has to make as to whether they want to present and position themselves as a generalist or in a niche. And as you rightly said, I think for beginners, if you're early in your design career, a generalist approach kind of works well. One, as you mentioned, yes, to see in Upwork, I think it's easy because people are posting, so you know what is in demand, which is not so if you are operating out of Upwork. But yeah, I think niche also works if you have good experience and expertise in a specific area, then niche might work a little better, both I think in Upwork as well as outside Upwork.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks. So yeah, cool. Awesome. So, what would you say then is, if I were to come on Upwork and I want to be successful, like what are like the must things? Like what would be
Uh,
essential for me in terms of my skills or otherwise?
um, the two things that like are like strictly speaking, you would need a strong profile to begin with, and then you have to craft those winning proposals where they get noticed by the client. Upwork gives you the statistics of how many proposals you have sent, how many they have been opened, and how many have you been interviewed and hired for. So utilizing those Upwork stats to keep a track of like whether your proposals are winning or not is something that you can always do and pivot as you go along. Those two things remain static, and you really need to focus on that initially at least to get those clients. But I would say you also need to learn how to vet clients based on the statistics that Upwork provides you with. Even before you apply for a job, you have access to client statistics of their hire rate, their reviews. All of that is public, and you can tell, unless the client is also new on the platform. Uh, I'm talking about the clients who have established profiles and have hired before. Um, you can look at their client stats and reviews and see if they're worth working with and if they're pleasant to work with. And client ratings are on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, and I personally don't work with any clients with a client rating less than 4.5. um, and that's just me, but you can sometimes take a gamble. Initially I used to take a gamble and give the client a benefit of the doubt, but from experience I've seen that those client ratings are kind of accurate and not just freelancers that they have worked with being disgruntled. So I do kind of have those statistics at the back of my mind before applying to a job post, because you don't want to waste your connects on something that is not going to materialize, or even worse, it'll make you end up working with a client that you don't like. So that is, client vetting is really important. And then of course after you land your contract, you really want to make sure you have a happy client at the end of it. So client management, and basically like you want to deliver exceptional work and make sure you have these client service, a good client service that you can provide to them and make sure they're happy at the end of it, so they leave you a good feedback and a good review. So those two bits are also as important as having a strong profile. And it kind of like feeds back into having a strong profile. Like if you end up with a happy client, they'll give you a good review, and then your profile gets stronger, and you have some stats like JSS, which is like job success score, which depends on your client feedback. And you want to make sure that all of that ties back into the whole experience of you with the client and them being satisfied and giving you that positive reviews and so on. So yeah, those are some things that I'd say are important.
Great. And I know we have discussed this in the past, but I'm going to ask this question again, which is uh, would you say that Upwork, if XYZ Upwork is for you or otherwise Upwork is not for you? Like something like that. Because the reason I asked that also is initially when I was exploring what platforms or what kind of approach do I take, I felt like Upwork is not for me. So I'll come to that a little later, but I just wanted to know from you as to would you say there is something like that, like for certain kind of designers or people, Upwork is not for you?
So I'll actually flip the script and ask you, like, what made you think that Upwork was not for you?
Like for me, it's ironical or funny because I think the same reason why you got attracted to Upwork, which is, oh, it's just proposal writing. That's something that I can crack and I can kind of get on board and find client very easily. For
Mm.
me, that was like, oh, it's too much work. Like, I don't think I want to get into proposal writing and things like that. So for me, that was the barrier that I have to go through a process in a pool of people, like highly competitive environment, right? So again, I was looking back in 2021 only, actually 2020, 2021. So say around same time. So again, it's like getting into a marketplace, fighting with other people, putting in a proposal. So that's exactly something that I didn't want to get into. So yeah, that was my reasoning.
Huh, interesting. Like it worked for me, it doesn't work for you. Like for me, proposal writing was like key because I was like, I can fix this problem. Like I've had so many proposals that I sent out where I was like telling clients how to like fix it, and I was like, I'm gonna give it my best shot. Like I was desperate at the beginning. Of course, I was desperate. I'm not going to deny that. I was like, and I failed many times. Like I've returned the money that I made through that project, and I've failed many times. But uh, at that point of time, I think I was more focused on exploring the different problems in the industry. As I previously mentioned, like Upwork, like was the point where I switched to design, and I was more interested in understanding the different problems people were facing in the design industry. So I was like, I'll try to solve anything that's thrown my way. I think that initial curiosity was something that made a different experience for me than for you. I believe you have previous design experience and all of that.
Yeah,
So
I think maybe that
design,
also factors in. Yeah. And
yeah,
you had design as a business analyst or something. Maybe you were comfortable writing proposals to that
that
extent. I
is
had never written proposals before that. So,
so yes. Initially, I used to work with like stakeholders as a business analyst and try to send like different proposals on like how you can improve internal systems. So maybe that was the case. But coming back to your question of like who would Upwork work for is like you definitely like again, this is common for freelancers in general, but I would say you definitely need that attitude of like having perseverance and the ability to like pivot as quickly as possible. Upwork landscape kind of shifts like every week, every month. It just shifts, and there's so many new things that you can do with Upwork. Like the client problems, they kind of stay static, but again, with the age of AI, the solutions of it are now different. And clients are like they can fix their own problems with AI, and that's a new problem. But again, uh, coming back to our question about who it is for, again, you have to be persevere through these A/B testing of proposal writing. You have to make sure you're sticking with the terms of service of Upwork. Again, it's not a lead generation platform. You kind of have to keep the clients that you get there for at least 2 years before you want to move them off the platform. You kind of have to stick with their terms of condition and make sure you don't break that, or they'll like suspend you or ban your account. And you can only have one account in your lifetime. So
Mm.
again, all of that, like I really liked. Also, the payment protections that they give for hourly or even fixed price payments, having it in escrow, like it solved a lot of the problems that I personally would have had as a freelancer in dealing with clients. Like I I didn't want to get into the admin side of it, of like invoicing and hounding clients for payments and all of that. So it solved all those problems for me. So I was more inclined to using Upwork because at least half of that headache is gone. I can focus on my design career and move forward with solving problems and see where it gets me. Um, and the plethora of problems that these different clients post is also very interesting. So that's why I was actually saying, when you're going through Upwork, like go through the different job posts that are there and see which are the problems worth solving, which are like some things that you can already solve, which you can maybe research and solve on. So having that curiosity kind of makes it very interesting. So I think those are some innate qualities you'd need to survive on the platform. Uh, so yeah, those are things that would make it work for you if you have those.
Is it true? Again, this might be just my perception, but is it like most of the projects on Upwork are purely executional and less on the strategic side and more on just fundamental executional UX UI? Or what would you say?
Initially, I was focused on the executional UI UX design stuff, but once I started getting hired by some agencies, like these were companies in like Canada and Australia. These were web design agencies who would bring their clients to me, and I'd service them from like start of like product wall validation, UX research, and all of that. Have
Mhm.
into projects. Those were the projects which gave me more insights into, oh, these are all the different processes that
Nice.
the information trickles down from here to here to here. And that kind of opened my eyes to, okay, it's not just design, it's what comes before that. I always tell people that what like when people ask me to explain my job, I say like I'm basically building the blueprint of a building before it's being developed and built with real materials, and without the blueprint there's nothing to build on. So I kind of give that analogy, and I'm like telling how important it is to get this right before you build something that's totally wrong for the user. And it's That's when I started realizing Upwork does not just have these executional projects. They are the majority though. But they also have the strategy based projects, which initially will like ask you to do UX research. This could be anything: focus groups, one on one interviews, product validation, anything of that research aspect, including like competitive research. But you would also be able to help drive strategy once you get all the information from the research. Once you synthesize the research, you will be helping them drive the strategy for the product, which could be a web app, a mobile app, a website, any of those kinds. I've done it for all. But strategy is actually the best part. I think strategy is the one thing, at least now, AI can't do that for you. Design, maybe it can, but strategy is something that still is in our hands. I'm pretty sure it'll go away. There'll be new AI apps and all, which will take over and be like, we can do strategy too in a few years. But I'm hoping for now strategy is mine, because it just makes me so happy to try and solve those basic problems before we build the final solution.
Yeah, so great to hear actually that there are strategy-based projects as well on Upwork. I did not know that. So yeah, that's awesome actually. So yeah, I think I've asked all the questions that I had in my mind. Do you want to add anything to the conversation? If not, we can move to the Q&A.
Let's move to the Q&A. I think we've discussed all the basics at
Cool.
least. So yeah, let's see what.
Okay. So to start with, I'll just ask some questions that people have already submitted. And people in the call here, if you have any questions, you can put it up on the chat or post this. You can just ask your questions. Okay. So I'm just going through the questions. If we have already covered, I'm gonna skip through it. Um, okay. So the first one is how to decide on pricing.
Hmm. That's an interesting question. Again, as I said, for proposal optimization, you have to do some A/B testing. You have to do some A/B testing with pricing initially, of course, with a blank profile, and uh, you would have to decide based on your experience as to how much you want to charge. Initially, I kept it low, but then I increased it. Like every 6 months, I was increasing it by $10 and seeing if that works, and making sure that I get clients at that price point. One thing about Upwork is your profile will log all your active and completed projects. So make sure your proposal, make sure your job hourly rates are kind of consistent. Don't go from like $5 to $50 and then back to $5 on the next project.
Hmm.
That discrepancy will kind of be really off-putting to some clients who wonder like, oh, you've done this project for like $5. Why should I pay 50? Something like that. So make sure it's consistent on your profile, but you will have to test out different price points yourself to see which one works for clients and which ones would not. Yeah, that's the strategy I went with.
And I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you could also look at other profiles of people with similar experience as you and see what pricing they are using to kind of use that as your base pricing, right?
That's actually a great point. One of the things while building the profile initially, I mean, even if you have a profile now, even if you're not a newbie, I would say go look at the talent in your niche or in your industry, or sometimes I
Geography as well, I think.
geography also
Yeah.
helps. For pricing, geography definitely helps. But for your profile optimization, like don't directly copy from other profiles the content of it. Do rewrite it. AI is available, so use ChatGPT to rewrite stuff. Don't copy different profiles, but I would say look at the different profiles and see what problems they're solving and how they're presenting themselves, and not only for hourly pricing, but the profile itself, like how it is
Interesting. Yeah.
uh, curated. Look at that and utilize that as well.
Hmm. The next question is what can the payment cycle be like?
So there's like standard two types of pricing. One is hourly pricing, and one is a fixed price per project based pricing that you would have. Payment cycles, usually you get paid for the hourly projects every week, but your fixed price is upon completion, you submit the work. Once it's approved, the money on the escrow is released to you by the client, and that's pretty much it. It's just two types of prices that you can provide for your projects, and it's pretty straightforward. Again, reading the terms of service or the terms and conditions of Upwork is really important. I would say go through that with a fine tooth comb and understand what you're signing up for before you start breaking any of those conditions without knowing.
Yes, Varun, you can ask your question. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Swati and Samik here. Thanks, Samik, for this call. It's been really insightful. So the question I had for Swati was, I see being a video editor on Fiverr also, I've seen a lot of people underselling, and I had to undersell myself when I started off early. So, is it suggestible for newbies who are just starting off to undersell at the very beginning, and then maybe they can jump to a specific rate that they have in their mind, or would you suggest to stick to their hourly rate that they expect to be paid for at the very initial stages as well? What would you suggest?
That's a good question, Varu. So in Upwork, when you are signing up for a job, like when you're writing a proposal for a job proposal, you will most of the time be able to see what the client has put in their required hourly rate is, or if it's a fixed price project, there will be a fixed price project pricing. So as long as you can like deliver that, I would say suggest I would definitely suggest kind of being within the bracket that they're mentioning in their job posting. And if it is lower than what you have in your profile, initially at least, I like, again, this would also depend on desperation. Initially I was super desperate to get some clients and to get some reviews in, so I lowered my price by a lot. And again, I was able to like raise it over a span of 6 months, like every 6 months, 3 to 6 months I was able to raise it. So again, whenever I get desperate, one thing I do on Upwork is, even if I lower my price, I what I do is I would scope out the project and estimate it as a fixed price project instead of hourly. And based on milestones, I would request the client to do a fixed price project. And basically that way, only your fixed pricing would be on your profile, not your hourly. So even if I have slashed my price by 50%, that wouldn't show up as an hourly project, since I'm doing it as a fixed price project. So that is a strategy that I constantly use in case I reduce my price by a lot, the hourly rate by a lot.
Thank you for sharing. So let's move ahead with the next question, which is how can you grow organically on search?
Oh, that's a difficult one. So Upwork, so from a client perspective, Upwork, like they can look up profiles for certain like UX research or UX design, and they will be handed with like uh, different profiles, different talent profiles, like freelancer profiles. And Upwork basically has this algorithm which uses more than 200 factors, and they rotate these profiles. So the search results are not going to be consistent every day. It's going to change every day. And this is something that's very difficult to crack down, because they use so many factors to create the search results. So I have known people who have made $2 million on Upwork, and even they can't crack it. uh, they say it's random. So I personally never focused on this aspect of it. I just make sure I have all the keywords in my profile for my relevant experience, and my JSS is high. They have some talent badges which are top rated plus, expert vetted, and top rated, and also like an initial like rising talent badge which also plays into it. But again, you kind of have to maintain good client management to ensure you have positive feedback, and all of that is like top notch in your profile. So again, it's way too many factors that the algorithm would consider, which I don't think like Upwork does not make the algorithm public, so we can only speculate. And I would say it's not a wise use of time to speculate on that, since it's so variable. I would still go ahead and focus on the proposal and profile, but uh, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much in your hands for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, Ankita, go ahead.
Hi Swati, this is Ankita here, and it was really insightful of whatever you added to the points. Makes sense. So my question was that, like, as a beginner, I'm pretty new to freelancing, and like I wanted to switch from the full time to a freelancer module. And my question was that, as a beginner, like you mentioned before earlier, that like there is a fixed pricing rate for some projects and there is hourly rate for some projects. So like when I see profiles, I get confused as to what kind of pricing module should I pose as a beginner newbie? Like, should it be a fixed pricing rate that I should put up, or should it be hourly rate that I should put up? So, yeah, so that is one question. And another one is like, with regards to the hourly rate. So, when you're working in two, at least two like, do you take at least two, three projects together? Or if you're handling one project at one time, what is the standard hours that, like, you can propose based on which you get the rate itself that you are proposing?
Okay. Thanks, Ankita, for your questions. Let's see. Let me tackle the fixed versus hourly first.
Yeah.
One thing about Upwork is you will have an hourly price set on your profile, but when you're applying or sending proposals for the job post, the client will have already picked if it's going to be an hourly or a fixed price project. So this is not something that's in your hands, although once your client contacts you, you can definitely ask them either hourly or fixed price. You can negotiate with them. Uh, but initially, it's going to be something that the client is going to set for you before you apply for the proposal. As a newbie, my recommendation would be to do hourly because there's this one fallacy, which is like for fixed price, there's only so much you can scope out. There's only like there's going to be additional tasks that are going to be added on, which will eventually increase the hours that you worked on the project to be higher, and then uh, basically reducing your average hourly rate based on the total cost of the project. So that would be problematic unless you exactly know how to scope out a project. So fixed price has that fallacy of you potentially doing additional work for less pay. So hourly is something that I would stick with as a newbie unless you're very aware of how to scope out the project. Um, does that answer your first question?
Yes, Swati, that makes sense.
And for the second one, the taking up of multiple projects, I think again this is common freelancer problem. It does come with experience as to how many projects you can take on at a same time, and again the variable would be like the time, effort, and how much money you're making off of the projects. You kind of have to like do trade-offs in between time, money, and effort, and see how much work you can put in each week. uh, like I've at least gotten it down now as to how much I want to work in a week. But initially, I used to overbook myself and stretch a lot and work through nights. I did all that. I've made my share of mistakes, but again, this is a trade off that you have to decide for yourself through experience how it happens. Again, you need a certain amount of money, you'll have to work a certain amount of time and put in that effort. And with Upwork, it's like you have to also do prospecting on the sites if you don't have long-term clients. So I would make sure I account for not only the hours that I'm working on projects, but also prospecting, sending proposals, looking at job posts, and all of that time into my week as well, because that is work too. So don't forget to add that into your whole time spent, because uh, that prospecting part doesn't pay unless you land a client. And that's what you have to focus on as well.
Thank you, Swati. I think that answered my questions, and yeah, it kind of makes sense that way.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point that you brought up of like general, even if outside Upwork, right? Generally, as a freelancer, to account for the time that you would spend trying to find clients and other activities that you're doing as well as part of your overall work. Cool. So the next question is, why should we pay for the connect? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The connects, each connect basically costs you 15 cents. It's like 10 to 12 rupees, I think. And you have to, each job post costs you at least 4 to 12 connects. It kind of varies through time, but connects are important because without you paying to apply for these job posts, what happens is it'll be a level playing field where anyone can apply for anything, and that kind of will increase the pressure on the uh, the client to vet out from thousands of applications. If it's free, everyone will apply, and that's what sets people apart. Unless you're willing to spend connects, you cannot apply, and you really need to like ration your connects in a way. There's only so much money you can spend through connects that so you have to be sure of what you're applying to. You can't just randomly uh, send in proposals and expect that it works. So make sure you budget your connects accordingly and apply to like me again. All the things that we spoke of in this earlier in this call will come into play. Look at the client history, look at their stats, make sure it's worth applying to before you apply to something. Don't randomly just uh, throw in proposals and expect something sticks. So other if there were no connects, the business model of Upwork would basically not work, and everybody would apply to everything, and it would be a shit show, frankly. And that's what sets Upwork apart, which again is a factor for me to have considered Upwork in the first place, which kind of makes it fair to the people who actually can solve those problems for those clients and bring that good experience and expertise to the platform.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? I mean, it shows your intent. Like, if you are willing to spend a little amount to apply, it means that you are really interested in actually working on that project. So I think it's a good marker of the intent of yours to work on the project.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Next question. You might have covered parts of this already, but if you want to add anything else, how to showcase detailed case study for clients?
Oh, in Upwork, I would not like, okay, on your profile, you can have detailed case studies. That is always a good thing. But I have noticed in the 3 years on my platform, people don't look at case studies. Nobody, again, we discussed this like strategy based versus execution based. So sometimes having those deliverables like deliverables itself will show that okay, you can deliver something that's clean cut and everything, which is a good thing. As even in proposals, you would submit your relevant work samples, but uh, since I said majority of the projects are execution based and they're deliverable based, you have to focus on that particular deliverable, and you can't really throw in a case study and expect them to like scroll through to the deliverable that they're looking for. So you have to be as accurate as possible when you're sharing your work samples. So if I have a project that's looking for UX research, I am going to focus on UX research. I'm not going to show them UX design case studies. If I have something that's like presentation design, I'm going to send them some slide decks. I'm not going to send them user interview guides. So you have to be very focused on the work samples you're sharing as well. And sometimes industries also matter. Again, there are multiple factors that fall into this, but if they're looking for someone who has experience in, say, fashion industry, you want to kind of show them those specific work samples. If you've done it, if you have no, if you don't have experience in that, you kind of can like I am always frank with clients and proposals, and I tell them that I don't have experience in this, but I've done this and this, which kind of equates to that. And even if I don't have that specific experience, I can still deliver the project because it kind of follows the same principles. So like again, all of those factors put together, it comes down to that.
Yeah, and I think that adds as a general freelancer as well, right? Even in my experience outside of Upwork, detailed case studies are not something that you show clients or potential leads.
And
I've never shown detailed case studies, but it's more like work samples, as you mentioned, in the context of what's relevant for the client from your
this
own
was
thing. So yeah,
actually Samyukta, this is one key difference between a full-time job interview and a
yes,
freelancing
yes,
interview. So
yes,
it took me like a few days to figure it out in the beginning when I started freelancing, because I was only used to applying to job interviews and they wanted case studies, start to finish. How did you do? What's your
yeah,
thought process? But freelancing, it's like a wild,
yeah,
wild west. They don't want to know all that background. They just want to know if you can deliver and on
yeah.
time. If that's it, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a key difference that I tell everyone as well, that it's a shift, right? You're not actually in a job hunting saying, oh, I know how to design, so this is my case study, this is how I think. Because most of the people hiring you don't know what designer is or how they're supposed to think. They're not designers who are hiring you to start with. So I think makes far more sense. Yeah, and as you said, far more important are whether you can deliver on time or what kind of outcomes you've met for other clients in the past or things like that. Cool. I have one last question here, which is what is the most important thing that needs to be taken care of while making a project proposal as a beginner to a client? I know you've mentioned again few points, but if you want to add anything else to this question.
Uh, Not really. I would still stick with those first two sentences being the key to them opening your proposal. I can't really emphasize on how important it is for you to get that right. And again, test out the different approaches you would use, test out the different versions. Like, I've seen people make mistake of introducing themselves in the first two sentences, saying, hi, I'm Swati, I'm a UI UX designer with experience of so and so. Like, I've made that mistake too at the beginning, and it's like you're wasting your premium real estate of those two sentences in telling them something that's so obvious, because along with the proposal the client will get to see your profile as well, so they already know who you are and everything, so you're kind of reiterating something that they already know, which again, that's a newbie mistake. But yeah, focus on problem solving for the client and focus on things that are intriguing enough to click on, and I think that's at least a starting point from where you can only build upon.
I think great points. Uh, and if I have to generalize that a little bit, basically, again, uh, extrapolating it to freelancing and job application or whatever in general, you are in a marketplace, you need to figure out how you're going to stand out from the others. So whatever strategy that works for you to reach, and as same like people don't go through long CVs or emails, people are not going to go through blog proposals unless there is something that's catching their eye very immediately as to, oh, this looks intriguing and interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Anything else you want to add? Closing comments, Swati?
I, I would say like thanks for all of you to actually come in and listen to this conversation about Upwork journey. I would just say keep at it and pivot as much as you can until you find the strategy that works for you. And again, Upwork landscape is constantly shifting, so I would suggest you focus on how you can evolve with it, rather than succumb to what you were working on previously. Again, it's a shifting landscape which you have to evolve with to succeed. And I would just say good luck to everyone who's trying it out.
Thank you so much for those words and for sharing all about your journey and your learnings and everything with all of us. Really grateful for that. And I hope people in the call and people who might be listening in the future get to take away some great insights through this conversation that they can apply in their own work. And many, actually, I have to say, are not just relevant just for Upwork, and they are even as a freelancer. A lot of what you said and you shared are actually highly relevant. So, yes, amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead.